All right, so now let's talk a little bit about Joe Biden's farewell address, and I'm curious your thoughts on it. There's a lot of moments that many people are talking about for a variety of reasons. So let's start with what he's now coining. Coining? Is that a thing?
Yeah,
what he's now coining? What he's now terming?
Yeah.
Is terming a thing too?
Coining. I don't know about terming. Deeming.
Coining doesn't even sound right. I don't know, but he's got a new name.
Okay.
For this behemoth, the tech industrial complex, obviously a play on the military industrial complex.
He's trying
from
to get
Eisenhower.
trying to get his Eisenhower on.
Which, to this day, people still show that clip and talk about that clip like a last of this day. Because, oh, look, the military industrial complex is a real thing and it's horrific, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's talking about the tech industrial complex. Let's watch.
It's also clear that American leadership in technology is an unparalleled source of innovation that can transform lives. We see the same dangers of the concentration of technology, power, and wealth. His farewell address, President Eisenhower spoke of the dangers of the military-industrial complex. He warned us then about, and I quote, the potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power, end of quote. 6 decades later, I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well. Americans are being buried under an avalanche of misinformation and disinformation, enabling the abuse of power. The free press is crumbling. Editors are disappearing. Social media is giving up on fact-checking. The truth is smothered by lies told for power and for profit. We must hold the social platforms accountable to protect our children, our families, and our very democracy from the abuse of power.
So your thoughts, what do you think of that?
I mean, well, there's parts of it that are actually a little concerned. Like, there's a danger of all of the misinformation, the fact-checking, like the censoriousness being a problem. But it's also just like, this is the move this guy pulled his whole presidency of pretending like, oh, I wish someone in power would do something. It's like, you were president for 4 years, and the tech industrial complex, has never been more powerful. We're going to play the thing about oligarchy. Has never been more ascendant or more powerful. You're stumbling over your words, so you're not even in a position to like make the case effectively. And one of his last acts was actually to exempt data centers, which are really key to this AI arms race that we and a bunch of giant tech companies are engaged in, to exempt those data centers from the sort of environmental requirements that other companies are required to follow in terms of their emissions. So it's just hard for me to take this seriously. It seems like a last-ditch effort to rescue a legacy that is going to be basically ushering Trump back into office and overseeing a genocide.
I mean, if you're concerned about the tech industrial complex, you could have broken up all the big tech companies, or at least try. Were they trying with Google?
I mean, I guess,
was it Google they were trying with?
To be fair to them, they took some steps, right? Lena Khan and the antitrust division of the DOJ, Jonathan Cantor, they did go after the tech companies. That's part of why tech has moved to the right. And it was sort of ends up being politically being a worst of all worlds, because Biden unable to articulate what he's up to, so people don't really know and don't have a coherent narrative of like why this is important and what it means moving forward. Like, where was this description of what's going on and the importance of it during his administration? So this is happening, and you're pissing off a lot of people, but you are not able to like enlist the American public in this project of checking big tech power. And another area that really pissed off a bunch of rich people was they actually tried to regulate crypto, right? The SEC under Gary Gensler, who a bunch of people, Mark Cuban hates and Elon hates and all these people hate, because he actually was trying to enforce the laws on crypto. That also was ongoing under the Biden administration. So there were things that were done that were a step in the right direction, and especially on antitrust, sort of reclaiming the history and the foundations of actual antitrust enforcement. But there was no ability to enlist everyone in it. There was no ability to tell a story about it. And so you have this massive tech shift to the right. They also, by the way, had like bought off Kamala Harris too. I don't have any expectation she would have continued in the same aggressive way that the Biden administration did. And so because of his own political failures, we're sort of screwed. Like it's kind of game over. You got David Sachs and Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and all these people who have taken control. And you had the crypto industry flooding DC on both sides of the aisle with massive amounts of cash. And while this was all unfolding during your time, like, you didn't have anything to say about it.
So they basically got stymied, is what you're saying. They tried vis-a-vis Lina Khan to go after some of these tech companies. They basically got stymied.
I mean, they've had some results, right? They've been able to secure some judgments.
But they didn't break up Google.
Against Google. I mean, that enforcement action is still ongoing. So the judge actually hasn't decided whether they're going to.
But isn't Trump going to drop the case now with the DOJ?
Question mark, but probably. But that's the reason that, that's a lot of what's going on of why all these tech leaders are bending the knee to Trump. Zuckerberg and Sundar Pichai and Tim Cook and all these people, because some of them, if not all of them, were facing some enforcement actions under Biden. They want that to go away, and they know it's easy to like just pay off Trump and flatter his ego and have smooth sailing.
But here's the thing, right? All these people are criminals. They're criminals. There's evidence of them being criminals. Think of a guy like Mark Andreessen and the fraud that he committed. Anybody involved at the top of the crypto industry, they're criminals. It might not be as brazen and as obvious as Sam Bankman-Fried, but they're all, to one extent or another, criminals. That's what they are. And so if this was something he really felt, he really believed, you could have literally had some of these fuckers jailed. It's the head on the pike in front of the kingdom, right? In front of the castle. It's like, oh, is this what we're doing? No, we're not doing that. And now you fraudsters are going to prison. And then again, you could try to break them up and really take on this power head on. I mean, even just raising taxes more, right? On the wealthy.
Yeah.
On these robber barons. So it's like, it's interesting, right? We're going to get to another clip in a second here. But it's interesting because, like, it's, again, on his way out, it's sort of like a, Bernie Sanders was kind of right about everything.
Yeah.
But okay, then why was your philosophy to governance splitting the difference between Bill Clinton and FDR? You got one foot in the neoliberal camp and one foot in the social democracy camp. And I gave him tremendous credit for the areas where he did do good stuff. But like, if the problem is as severe as you're describing, then your actions didn't match that reality,
Yeah, absolutely. And one of those actions being deciding to run for re-election again.
Right, that's
when
right,
you're
yeah.
tremendously unable to. I mean, it'll be a miracle if he's still alive in 4 years. He even admitted he doesn't know if would be able like up to the job for another 4 years. He even admitted that in an exit interview. And so all of the nascent good things that were done with the FTC and with antitrust, including the government is pushing for a breakup of Google based on the lawsuits that they filed against them. So that is still ongoing. But because you were unable to articulate any sort of case and enlist the American people in this action, so this is all happening like behind the scenes, unremarked upon, which means there's no public political buy in it, which means it's easy for Trump to kill. And number two, because you decide to feed your own ego and hand the country back over to Trump effectively by trying to run for office again, it means any of these nascent efforts are just dead and gone. And, this narrative that you want to articulate now, like, this story needed to be told a long time ago so that people understood what the threat was, understood the way you were trying to combat it, and were enlisted into this fight.
So before we get to the next video, I'll tell you some other things he mentioned in the speech. He said he wants 18-year term limits for the Supreme Court, which, I don't know, that's such a Democrat move to me, because it's like, if you're going to do term limits, why would you say you get 18 years? That's almost like not having term limits, right? Like,
yeah,
it's being there for 18 years is like a fucking lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, it should definitely outlast, right, a two-term president. But 18 years is a long time.
That's crazy. 18 is too much. But I like the idea of term limits, but 18 is way too much.
Yeah.
He also goes on to say no stock trading for Congress, which is great.
Yeah.
I'd go a step further and say ban the revolving door, of course.
Yeah.
He also says...
But again, you were president for 4 years.
I know,
like, where was your fight on these?
I know, there was no fight.
I'm not saying he didn't support these positions. I know he supported these
But it's
positions.
like with the PRO
but it's
Act.
like, you had an opportunity to fight for these things. You were the man. And now on your way out, you're like, oh, golly gee, someone with some power should really do that. It's like, well...
It's like with the PRO Act. I support it, which is why I'll never mention it ever again. Like, that's the bottom line on it. And then this one, I really got a kick out of this one. He says, no immunity for presidents for crimes they commit in office because that's bullshit. That's bullshit part was the commentary of the Twitter account I'm reading. But he says no immunity for presidents for crimes they committed. I mean, okay. If you guys got the ball rolling with Merrick Garland earlier, Trump would probably be in prison right now. Right?
Yeah.
So, like, that's point number one. Point number two is...
Well, you should not have picked Merrick Garland. That's point number one.
That's true, yeah.
But you should not have picked Merrick Garland. It should have been immediate, right? After January 6th, like, they needed to move fast because memories are short. And it gave the Republicans an opportunity to create this whole alternate story about what happened on January 6th and how they were really peaceful protesters and blah, 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 and it wasn't so bad anyway, et cetera, et cetera. And you lose momentum. And then, you know, with regard to Merrick Garland and Jack Smith, like, there was just not enough time to actually bring these cases to trial to have an opportunity to hold this man to account for his crimes. So,
but also, Biden and Obama let George W. Bush get away with all of his crimes, let Dick Cheney get away with all of his crimes. He's arming and funding a genocide and doesn't give the single slightest fuck about it. And so for him to be like, hey, you can't commit crimes in office, it's like you're signing yourself up to get arrested.
Yeah.
You know,
okay.
which,
good.
we like that.
Well, and that's why he's saying it on the way out when it doesn't have a prayer of getting any sort of political traction.
But what he means is Trump. He's just saying Trump. He's just saying
he doesn't
Trump.
want
Trump
that
got away
sort
with
of
it.
accountability for himself, certainly, or Obama, or or even George W. Bush, because he sees him as one of the club.
He doesn't think he did anything wrong. He doesn't think George W. Bush did anything wrong. He just thinks it's Trump. I got bad news for you. It's all you motherfuckers to one degree or another. All right, so now let's go to the video almost everybody's talking about. Take a look at this.
I have no doubt that America's in a position to continue to succeed. That's why my farewell address tonight, I want to warn the country of some things that give me great concern. And this is a dangerous and that's a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few ultra-wealthy people. And the dangerous consequences if their abuse of power is left unchecked. Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. We see the consequences all across America, and we've seen it before, more than a century ago. But the American people stood up to the robber barons back then and busted the trusts. They didn't punish the wealthy. They just made the wealthy play by the rules everybody else had to. Workers want rights to earn their fair share. You know, they were dealt into the deal, and it helped put us on a path to building the largest middle class and the most prosperous century any nation in the world has ever seen. And we've got to do that again.
You know, I seem to remember when Biden very famously told a room full of wealthy donors when he was running for president, and I quote, "Nothing will fundamentally change."
That's right.
I seem to remember when Joe Biden coasted because of contributions from multimillionaires, billionaires, and corporations, coasted using that money to defeating Bernie Sanders to then get in office.
That's right.
And so now to hear this, it's like you're admitting Bernie Sanders is correct. You're admitting that his conception of politics is accurate, that it's class, it's the 1% versus the 99%, it's the corruption in the donor class and the bribery has made it so we have this ultra-wealthy class that gets away with everything and other people get screwed. You're admitting that, but again, your actions didn't really match the severity of the moment if you believe what you say. I mean, thing number one on your list, if you truly believe that this is the case, thing number one on your list has to be, we got to find a way to tax the wealthy, right? We got to find a way to get money out of politics. We got to find a way to redistribute. And again, I'll give credit where credit is due. Build Back Better was a phenomenal bill. But again, if the severity of the moment is as serious as you say, you had to find a way to get Joe Manchin to fall in line or Kyrsten Sinema to fall in line or try harder than you did at the very least, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why this is frustrating, because it's like, again, oh, lefties, you're right about everything. Bernie, you're right about everything. But also, like, the way I governed, again, split the difference between neoliberalism and social democracy and was largely ineffectual at really stopping the trends of history, and now it's about to get put on steroids.
At least with the tech industrial complex thing, you could say, like, okay, he did have Lina Khan. He did have Jonathan Cantor. There was something he did there, right? With this, it's like, dude, you are the tool of the oligarchy. Like, who do you think the oligarchy was behind in the Democratic Party primary back in 2020? They used you as a tool to defeat Bernie Sanders, the man who might have actually dealt with these issues. So for you now to turn around after 50 years in Washington, being a tool of the exact and taking tons of cash from the exact robber barons that he now wants to decry.
Right.
Why should anyone take you seriously on this issue? And, there's a parallel here, because it's not just Joe Biden who now suddenly is like, oh, that Bernie Sanders had some points now that Bernie Sanders will never be able to run for president again.
James Carville said it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, now that it's too late, now that it's over, and the oligarchs have control, and Elon Musk is doing Doge, and David Sachs and Peter Thiel, and they have taken over, and crypto has bought Washington on both sides of the aisle, by the way. Now that it's over, you want to pretend like you are on the side fighting against this when your entire career is on the opposite side of this battle. And it sort of reminds me of, now that Gaza has been utterly destroyed, now you've got a few people on MSNBC, a few media outlets who've suddenly gotten up their courage.
60 Minutes did this.
Yeah, 60 Minutes drops footage that they literally recorded in Gaza from May. Now they're like, oh, it's really bad there. It's really, and we're complicit. It's really bad. It's like, now that it's over, and now that your reporting won't change anything, now's the time that you drop it. And it's got the same feel to me with Joe Biden. Where was your concern about money in politics? Where was your concern about oligarchy? Where was your concern about taxing the rich when you were going and telling rich people, don't worry, nothing will fundamentally change?
You know what? It just occurred to me now, too. I think the reason why he's leaning into this, I actually think there's a partisan angle to this, because we all just witnessed in real time Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, long list of all of these billionaires who in the past were bipartisan in the sense that they tried to buy both parties. Now they're coming out of the closet as actually we're MAGA, actually we love Trump and Republicans, because of course they want the money to keep flowing, they want the tax cuts, they want the deregulation, they want the corporate welfare, they want the subsidies, etc. And so now they're all coming out of the closet like, oh yeah, MAGA, totally. And so he's seeing that, and now I feel like since he can view it in a partisan way, it's like, okay, yeah, they all went Republican, fuck them, fuck the robber barons, and it's like, it was fuck the robber barons, even when many of them were donating to corporate Democrats.
Right.
That's what it should have been.
The Obama-Biden era was characterized by close alliance with Mark Zuckerberg and Eric Schmidt and all of these giant tech companies. They were very happy and very proud to be very closely allied with all of these people until they decided that they wanted to make a right turn. So a right-wing turn. So I think you're right about that, now that it's like a partisan Democratic political talking point, now is when he's able to acknowledge it and come out and decry it. But when it was difficult, and this is always like, look for what people say when it's a difficult thing to say, when it takes some courage.
Right, exactly.
When it requires you to go out on a limb or go against, your own party. Not when it's easy and it's safe and you're just pointing the oh, that Trump, he shouldn't be a criminal, and that Trump, he shouldn't be hanging out with these oligarchs. And it's like, well, where have you been this entire 50 years when both parties were selling the country out to the highest bidder?
Yeah, and I guess I would say it was possible for him to deliver a good speech, but for him to deliver that speech, I mean, number one, I think you need to prioritize honesty over everything else. But number two, he could have just listed the good things he did and said, like, we need to build on these things, right? If he went out there and he said, we did student loan debt reduction, we did $1,400 stimulus checks, we pulled out of Afghanistan, we reduced the drone war, we did the CHIPS Act and the Infrastructure Bill and the Inflation Reduction Act and 15% corporate minimum tax rate, and did I say the CHIPS Act? The CHIPS Act.
Yeah.
We created 800,000 manufacturing jobs and whatever. You can list, we did some semblance of gun reform with the red flag laws. Remember that? Like, if he just went out there and was like, boom, 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 here's what we did, then my commentary would be like, he's not wrong. Like, he's telling the truth about that shit.
Yeah,
right? But
it's just all overshadowed by Gaza.
It's all overshadowed by Gaza, number one. But number two, you can't do this overarching I'm Bernie Sanders type speech when you were not Bernie Sanders and you disagreed with that for a very long time.
It's a Hail Mary to try to rescue a legacy that is fundamentally unrescuable. Between Gaza and, I mean, the one thing he ran on in 2020 was like,
saving democracy.
I will end the Trump era. That was the central promise of the Biden campaign. And through his own narcissism, ego, and failures, he completely failed in that. And while he was at it, you know, facilitated a genocide and I think utterly destroyed any conception of international rule of law or the rules-based order, the post-World War II architecture. Like, a liberal democratic president did far more damage to that, actually, than Donald Trump did. And
well, Bush started it, but it was Biden.
It was Biden that put the nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think, I mean, it will never be the same. Like, the level of barbarism that has been unleashed in the world by his actions in Gaza, I think, are truly unfathomable, and it's going to be horrific. You know, this is what Trump is seizing on now, this moment of basically like law of the jungle, all barbarism, might makes right, when he's like, oh, let's take Canada and let's take Greenland and Panama and whatever we want. Like, we're the big superpower, so we can just take what we want. That is a recognition of this new era that Biden really cemented of, it's just, if you can and you got the guns and you got the willingness to, you know, whatever brutality you're willing to engage in, then that's what's going to be. So that's Joe Biden's legacy. That's it. And no speech that he was going to, there was no speech he could give that was going to change that one bit.
Hey guys, we were going to have Ryan Grimm on the show today, but he had to go yell at a war criminal, Anthony Blinken, and so Crystal and I just did a show by ourselves. You're going to want to sign up on Substack to see the full thing because we cover a bunch of awesome clips, including Joe Rogan falling for more fake news, and Bill Burr absolutely killing it on Jimmy Kimmel and embodying the spirit of Bill Hicks and George Carlin and being a true comedian, not a suck up to Trump. So sign up below, you'll see that and much more. See you there.